ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the studio, and today I'm going to do a brush review for you. I've got these wonderful Vinci Casaneo brushes that I'm going to review. I bought these because I want to find a brush that is a synthetic hair that rivals the squirrel hair brushes that I really like. So I think these might be able to do it. Let's give it a try. Let's look down at the table and see how they are. Okay, so let's take a look at these brushes. They come in a nice clear packaging like a lot of Da Vinci things. These, like I said, are the Casaneo round brushes. They are vegan, so no animal product in there. Series 5598, it says right here, and sizes 5, 6, 8, and 10. Let's open these up, okay? Slide these out if we can. There we go. Looks like one of them doesn't have a sheath on it. Fell off in transit. It's there, but let's pull the rest of these off. And we can look at them, and they look like a brush that has a nice big fat belly on them, so I'm betting they're going to carry a lot of water. This is a size 10, and it's quite large. And as I'm looking at them, boy, this one, they all come to a very fine point. This one may be too much. Let's get these a little bit wet. I'm going to soften them up off camera and bring them back, and we're going to see how they perform. Okay, I've gotten these brushes. They are all nice and wet, nice and soft. I've gotten all the gum off of the tips of all of these, so we can take a look at them. And just initially, when I hold them to take a look at them, they all look like they come to a nice point. I'll just get them wet and dip in, and as I turn them, they all do seem to come to a pretty nice point. So I think that I'll probably be able to draw some pretty straight lines with these. But as I look at my brushes, one of the things I want to know that they can do, and so I'm going to do this right here, is I need to know, are they really going to come back to this shape, right? So I'm just going to dip them in the water, give them a little tap, and see, do they really come back to the shape that I want them to come back to. This one seems to pretty well, and oh, my brushes are sliding off my table. And you can see this has got a giant belly on this. I hope you can see it's got a giant belly. I'm betting this one is going to hold a ton of water. Get this one wet, snap it back. Okay, this is a number 6, not quite as fine a point on this. Maybe I can hold it up here and you can see, not quite as fine a point, but still all the bristles come back to one point. Same with this one. This is sopping wet. Everything's coming back just nicely. That's the size 5. I've got a size 8 here. I just tap it, and yeah, all of these come back to a nice point. So the bristles are made well. The brush end is made well. This one seems to kind of go off at an angle a little bit. The bristles are made well, they're put together well, so that's a good indication that these brushes are going to do very nicely when we put them to a little bit of test. So what I want to do is find out what kind of a carrying capacity for the water these have, and I'm going to use this brush. This is a large brush, size 10. Let me get some alizarin crimson on here, and I'm going to load this up. I'm really going to load this up. I'm doing this off camera, but I'm going to hold it here. I hope you can see there's a lot of paint on here, just as much as I can get on here. And let's just see how much paint this holds. I should say this paper that I'm using is a large sheet of Fabriano hot press watercolor paper. I'll give you the size of this in just a second, but wow, look at this. Yeah, just as I suspected, this brush will hold a ton of water. Still going with it. I'm not pressing any harder. I press the same at the beginning as I'm pressing now. The water's coming out. The paint is coming out of this brush. It's just still going, still going. Wow, so this is holding actually a bit more water than I really thought it was going to. That's a giant size number 10. You could really do some flat washes with that. That would just go on forever, I'm assuming. Let me load up my number 8 here too. I've just spun this in my paint. So I've got as much paint on here as I can possibly get. Let's just see what kind of capacity this brush has. I'm going to do the same test with this just to see. And this one easily, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of these easily with that large brush. And this one not much less. That's about all I'm going to go with that one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 of it with this. Doesn't hold as much water. Exactly what you expected from a slightly smaller brush. Now let me get number 6 here and do the same test with this one. And yeah, this one's continue to hold a lot of water. I'm not pressing any harder to get this to come out. My line spacing should be pretty consistent. I've rested my hand on my desk and I'm just moving the brush back and forth. Wow, this one held quite a bit. That's 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 turns with this one also. And there's more in there to give. Let's try it with the smallest one. This is a number 5 brush. I do think these hold as much as my normal brushes. Okay, so this one is a much smaller brush. You can see the tips on that are very small. It's not holding nearly as much water as the other ones. Let me bring all these back inside here so you can see them. Yeah, so this is number 10 here, the number 8, the number 6, and the number 5 brush. A fantastic amount of water. I'm going to do a similar test with this in just a minute to see how they hold up to a similar brush of another full synthetic that I have, a sable brush, and a squirrel hair brush that I like. But for the initial test, the capacity of these, fantastic. Right? One other thing that you want to look at with your brushes when you get them is there a consistent release of water? And you can see as you look at the release on here, oh, they're going to slide right down. It's very consistent. It just, from this side, from the first run of all of these, just ever so slightly gets lighter and lighter as we move across. There's no big blobs that come out. There's no areas where the paint just doesn't run out. It's very consistent across all of these. Now I want to do another test here, and I'm going to use, I think for the rest of these, I'm going to use this number 8, right? And I want to test whether, I'm going to get a nice blob of paint on here. And then I want to test to see if I can pull some of that off of there. So I'm gonna dry my brush, and I'm gonna see will this brush wick up some of this paint? Does it have capacity to pull this back off? Some brushes do a lot better job at this than others. This one appears to do a pretty good job of pulling that paint off. This is alizarin crimson, so it's a staining paint, and even so, look, I can pull a lot of that color right off of there. I think that's done a Very good job with that. Now, if one other thing is, if I'm going to be using a brush, I try to use, well, I don't always try, but I like to use one brush as long as possible. How thin of a line can I paint with this brush? I'm betting this is a brush I'm going to be using more than the others. And I can paint a pretty thin line with this. Not super thin, but not a bad line for a brush that big. Let's see what I can get with this big brush. Let's see, I gotta get it wet. I gotta get it more wet than this. All right, this is the size 10. This is the biggest brush there is. Let's try to draw a fine line with this one. It's not coming quite as nicely. It wants to do a bit of a fatter line. That's a little thinner line. If I really am careful with it, I can get a bit of a thinner line, but really have to be careful. And I did notice, much like with my squirrel hair brushes, you see if I hold the brush this way, the bristles are all fat. If I turn it, look what happens. They thin out. They don't bounce back on their own like a sable brush would. They don't bounce back to their original position, at least on that larger brush, at least on the big one. So here's a size 6 brush. Let's see if we can do a line or two with this and see how it goes. Well, this one I can just tell you, this is pretty easy to do this line with. And it's about the same width as, there's one even thinner. I get a little bit of paint off. I can do a line. So I can do about the same width as the number 8 brush. All right, that's pretty good. I don't suspect that I'll be able to do a whole lot better with this one because it doesn't look like it comes to a super fine point, but let's take a look at this. I'm going to turn this and go this way just a little bit. Let's go over top of this. I'm going to keep your hand down. Yeah, that's about the same. It's about the same line as these other ones here. Not much different with those. I said this one doesn't have the sharpest tip on it, so it's about what I would expect. Okay, and after we test these things, then, you know, if you're testing a brush and you find these things acceptable, and to me these look like they're fantastic for these brushes, the next thing I would like to look at is how does it feel in your hand? Is it comfortable? If you're somebody who likes to paint up here, hold your brush up here, is it going to feel good? If you're someone who likes to hold your brush down here, is it going to feel good? And one thing I noticed from these is they have a big fat bulge in the barrel of these. Just a really fat bulge. And I pulled them out of the bag originally, you know, a couple minutes ago, and I went, uh-oh, that's going to be a bit weird. But since I've been doing this, it naturally kind of falls in your hand right here. Just a nice place. You put your thumb on the downturn of this one. Put your thumb right there. It just kind of falls right in there. So I give that high marks. They feel really nice. They feel light in your hand, well balanced. I have some that have brushes that have a plastic handle. These are wood, and they just feel too light. Like the head is too heavy because it's a hollow plastic here. But these ones feel really nice. So I'm really happy with that. My initial thoughts so far are that for the $40 or so that you're going to pay for these on Amazon, these are probably going to be really nice brushes. I'm going to be curious to see how, I've got one hair coming out right there. I'm going to be curious to see how the hairs stay in and how they perform with my style of painting, which is another thing. But so far, so good. Let's bring up another sheet of paper here, and let's do a quick comparison. I'm going to use this number 8 size brush, and I'm going to do a comparison between this Casaneo, which is a full synthetic brush, with a number 8 Princeton Neptune brush, which is also full synthetic. It's a similar size, not the same. This is a Martini brush, which is pure gray squirrel hair here. This is the Silver Black Velvet number 8, which is a squirrel hair and synthetic hair mix. And then this brush, which is a Rubloff Siberian Kolinsky brush. So let's see kind of how these compare to each other. Let me get them all nice and wet here. The first thing we're going to take a look at are the tips of these. And as I just get them wet, we can look and see this one's got a big fat belly to it. This Martini brush here also has a big belly to it, and they both come down to a nice tip. I would suspect that if you bent them, they would both bend about the same way. But my Princeton here, which doesn't have a very sharp point to it, doesn't have a big belly right away, and the Silver Black Velvet is a little smaller, but it's got a bit of a belly. It's swollen up with water. And my Kolinsky one, it's got a bit of a belly swollen up with water. But this one didn't come quite to as sharp a point as I had hoped. But let's just see how they do some lines. So let's go back and do a couple of lines with, first of all, the Vinci Casaneo, and let's do alternating thin, thick, thin. So as I'm doing this, I can tell you, I'll do 2 lines of this. As I'm doing this, I get some paint out of my pan, and it flattens down exactly like a squirrel brush would. And it feels like a squirrel brush as I use this fatter, thinner line. It doesn't want to bounce back quite all the way as I'm doing this. Okay, so there's our Casaneo brush. Let's do this full squirrel hair brush right next to it. I bet our marks are going to look pretty similar. Okay, thin line to thick and back up, thin line to thick and back up, thin line to thick and back up. And again, you could see, I hope you can see, you probably can't see because the camera is going straight down, that my bristles don't entirely straighten out as I do this. And as a result, you get these little bulges at the bottom. Here's one, here's one. When you do this, I suspect, let's do this one next. This is the Kolinsky Sable brush, but I would suspect this has a little bit more spring to it. That would be a little bit more gradual. I got the one that's a little chunky here. There we go. And you can kind of see where one pressure, you go down, more pressure on the downstroke, and on the upstroke, there's just a little puddle of water. Constant, downstroke gets lighter here. Upstroke, you get a little puddle, and then it's constant, down, more, up, makes a puddle. And we can kind of see how those go across here. This one, the Casaneo one, seems to have put a lot of water on, especially on that first one where the brush was full over here. We don't get those marks on there. We do get them on the second one. So this one is the silver black velvet brush, composite, right? It's both synthetic and natural hair. And I'm already needing to refill this, I can tell. One go around. This one doesn't hold quite as much water. It's not quite as big, so I don't read too much into that. But here's what we've got with that. And you can see the difference in this one, right? And what these ones look like in the mark. And then here's the other one I have. This one is pure synthetic. Princeton Neptune. And I can't get as fine a line with this one as I do with the others. And these bristles actually bounce back quite a bit more. This one to me feels more, it's kind of hard for me to say this, but it feels more like a sable brush to me than it does a squirrel hair brush, which I'm used to. And so there we go. You can see a little bit of the differences between all of these brushes. The Casaneo, where's the one I was using? Number 8? I was using an 8. The Casaneo brush seems to be holding up with all of those other ones about the same. It does feel really nice, I have to say. And I'm pretty impressed that you can get a pretty fine line with even this big brush here. So, whoa! So, that's my review of these. You're going to see me do some paintings with these in the coming days, weeks, and months. And I'm going to do some live videos. If you have interest in these, you'll be able to ask me about those. But for now, that's what I've got. Thank you all for joining me here in the studio as I opened up my Casaneo, Da Vinci Casaneo watercolor brushes, all synthetic hair, vegan. And that's what I got for you guys. Thank you so much. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.